Welcome, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us for today's Fusion Academy School Showcase. My name is Christine Lai. I'm the Executive Director of Special Education Legal Fund, so thank you all for joining us. I'm going to start off. I hope you enjoyed that little peek at Fusion Greenwich. I apologize for my voice. And I'm going to start off with a little introduction so we can get to know the people that have joined us, our distinguished panel today. And at the end of the introduction, we'll show you another glimpse of a different Fusion campus. So let's go. So welcome, everyone. I'm so thrilled that everyone's joining us today. For those of you who are not familiar with us, my name is Christine Lai again. And Special Education Legal Fund is a nonprofit organization that was founded in Connecticut in 2018 to provide resources, knowledge, and support to families in need with children in the special education system. We itself empower parents and guardians to full advocacy for their students, and we seek to level the playing field for families in need with children in the special education system. We do this primarily through two grant programs, the Attorney Grant Program and the Advocate Grant Program. Both of those programs are open right now for the October grant cycle. The Attorney Grant Program provides up to $6,000 in legal support from a qualified special education attorney to a family that qualifies. The Advocate Grant Program provides families with up to $1,000 in advocacy support from a qualified non-attorney special education advocate. And if you'd like to begin the process or are interested in learning more about it, please visit our website, spedlegalfund.org, apply for grant. There's a little button there. It's really easy, or you can scan this QR code for more information. I would be remiss if I didn't mention our upcoming webinar on October 9th. This is our third year of this webinar with WealthSpire Advisors, and we're thrilled to bring it back. It is a webinar that touches on all aspects of special needs planning for students with needs. That starts with schools, it goes to trusts and beyond. We're pleased to have moderating that Michael Delgas from WealthSpire Advisors, as well as Rich Yam from WealthSpire, Marion Walsh, attorney from Littman Crooks, and Adrian Arcontaki from Arcontaki Law. This is a great webinar, and if you have a child that has needs, you're not sure what to do to plan for the future, this is a great thing to sign up for, same way that you did for this Fusion Showcase. First, I'd like to introduce Maggie Gregory. Maggie is a longtime friend of both Self's and mine. This is, normally I would count the number of times that you've been on panels before we do this, but I think you're more than 5. I don't know, something like that. Anyway, Maggie's the area head of school for Fusion Greenwich and Westchester. She's been with Fusion forever. She's helped pioneer the program in Greenwich. She has taught and been involved with both my kids. And was particularly helpful and supportive during a difficult time in our lives when we had to deal with the school closing and not knowing what to do when that next step came forward. So we love Fusion, we love Maggie, and we're really glad that she's joined us again today. So thanks, Maggie. Like to mention, to next introduce Amanda Sylvester from Fusion Fairfield. And we're thrilled to have Amanda on this panel today. She's got a ton of experience in the Fusion model and as an educator in general, and really, really excited to hear about how she is talking about Fusion Fairfield and that campus and how it differs from the Westchester and Greenwich and and what makes that campus special. So welcome, Amanda. Like to sorry, we're 3 down now. I'd like to welcome Tal Mintz to our panel today. Tal is the Director of Admissions at Fusion Westchester, and we're really excited to have him join as he brings great energy to the Fusion team, beginning with his educational journey that started as Teach for America, an organization that I love and that's very dear to my heart. And we're excited to hear what he has to say about his new role at Fusion Westchester. So welcome, Tal, to our panel. And finally, I'm welcoming Bobby Jo Beers, who's the Director of Admissions at Fusion Greenwich. I love Fusion Greenwich, as I said. It is a real, it's just a real it's just a real island of peace. Can I say that? And that's what the campus, is for me. Nothing against any other campus, but I really love, the feeling of peace that steals over you as you arrive at the Greenwich campus. And I'm so pleased that Bobby Joe's with us today to share that feeling and to share what makes, Fusion Greenwich special with us. So thank you so much again, Bobby Joe. This wouldn't be a webinar without a disclaimer. I'm not going to read this because obviously my voice is not, a fan of that at the moment. But if you are a participant on this panel and you'd like to ask a question, I will put my email in the chat so that you can ask the question of me privately, and we can ensure your anonymity. As you know, this is not this is a public forum. It is being broadcast, it's being recorded, and it can be used at any date by Special Education Legal Fund in the future. So I will provide that information in the chat once we get started. So here we go. And finally, we will share. Thank you, everyone. Just to kick this off, I'd love it if each one of you can talk about your path and how it led you to Fusion. Maggie, do you want to go first?
Sure, I'd love to. And thank you for the great introductions of all of us. We're happy to be here. We love SELF. We love working with you guys. And the webinars are always great. They're my favorite. So yeah, I think I'm a 5+
Mine
stamp of the
too.
webinar.
You are. I'm going to get a jacket soon.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Perfect. Yeah, I think that's a great question and a really important one on what brings us into Fusion. I think if you've ever spent time on our website or, the tours of the campuses already, it can be very captivating. So 12 years ago, actually 13 in April, I walked into the Park Avenue campus to teach English and history. I was applying for a department head job. And as soon as I walked into the lobby and just got the feel of the campus, it was hard to turn away. So starting then in just teaching in the one-to-one, my background was English 7 through 12 and teaching in higher ed. And when I stepped on that campus and had, the great gift of being able to teach students and lead my own classroom, have my own set of book lists and be able to help students really engage with reading and literature and express their thoughts within the one-to-one, it's every teacher's dream. So kind of never looked back after that.
Wonderful. Amanda, would you like to go next?
Yeah, I'd love to. Thanks so much. I just started my 17th year at Fusion, so been here quite a while. I
Oh,
was
wow.
fortunate enough to, yeah, start as a teacher, a math and science teacher at the original location in Solana Beach, California. So at the time when I started, Fusion was still just one single solitary school. And then shortly after that, we started to replicate and now have over 80 campuses across the country. I'm originally from the East Coast, so I found my way back here, now settled into Fairfield, Connecticut, where I'm an alum of Fairfield University. So when Fusion decided to open here, they asked if I would like to
Stags.
relocate. Go Stags. Yeah, I'm right down the road. And so I was thrilled to be able to come and open a campus in a town that I love so much. And I've been helping to, prior to that, support the openings of the campuses. So I was fortunate to meet Maggie pretty shortly after my return to the East Coast. And just love to see Fusion sort of spreading what we do, and having seen it change and grow so much over 17 years. It's been amazing, but we're still really true to our original sort of mission and philosophy. And that's really what's kept me here for so long. And I just love to see like all the things that we've added to our programming and all the new ways that we have found to be able to support our students.
Amazing, amazing. Bobby Joe, would you like to go next?
Hi, yes, thank you. I'm excited to be here. I just started over the summer. I have spent my career in business, entrepreneurship, and nonprofit leadership. I was introduced to the Fusion model a few years ago when I was working for doing some community liaison and community building and nonprofit development for a company out in Bethel called Workspace Academy. Unfortunately, they're no longer there. And kind of interwoven, and Fusion's model just really spoke to me. And the job of connecting, I'm a master connector. I have a love for education and a passion for helping others. And Fusion just fit. The second I walked onto this campus, I knew it was the right fit. And then never mind meeting Maggie. Maggie was made it very easy to say yes
Maggie
to,
seals the deal.
to yeah,
Absolutely.
Maggie sealed the deal out of coming out of, working for myself for so long to, coming into this environment. So I'm really excited to be here and be part of the team. And I think the other part that really drew me was the fact, hearing Amanda's story of 17 years, but Maggie being here 13 years, and everybody that's been here has just been here for so long that that that's a good company to
Absolutely. Love that.
sink your teeth into.
Love,
So.
love that. Thank you. Tall?
So excited to be here. Thank you for having us. If you can tell from the energy, I am a former kindergarten, first and second grade teacher.
Love
And
that.
so I think there's nothing like working with kids, nothing like supporting families. And before I was at Fusion, I actually spent the last 5 years in recruitment trying to bring more incredible teachers who go above and beyond for their kids in the classroom. And that's really what stood out to me about Fusion Westchester and Fusion as a whole. So we always talk about how you can't teach to the average. Well, when you have a one-to-one teacher student ratio, it is the most intentional type of curriculum building that we can offer. And so
Mhm.
it is just so empowering and incredible to be at Fusion. I also joined over the summer. Also have the pleasure of working with Maggie and getting to be around the Westchester campus, and very happy to be here and just have been blown away by the intentionality and support that Fusions offers our students.
Wonderful. Thank you all so much. So I think all of I and my family have personal experience with Fusion, with both of my children. And so when I think about Fusion, the word that comes to mind is flexibility. Can each one of you kind of weigh in on what that means for you and the experience that students have at Fusion?
Yeah, I can start and go through our chain as we have. Flexibility is definitely the key word in working with Fusion, whether it's in the classroom and being flexible with our assignments or accommodations or modifications to meet a learning profile where they are, and also a human being where they are. So really understanding who's in front of us and being intentional and personalizing the curriculum and the way we deliver material to the student. That's one wing of flexibility in our program. But then we also serve students with a robust medical needs, that they can't come first thing in the morning. They need to start their day at 10:30 or 11:30, depending on their medications or their treatment schedule. So we are able to offer a flexible start time, or if there's dates that they are having procedures done, they don't have to have the whole class move on without them. We can, skip that day, reschedule it so that we're able to work around them. And then I think another group that flexibility really rings true are athletes. So we see a number of students that come to us that are, semi-professional athletes or actors or musicians that need that kind of flexibility to support their life and their hobbies and where they're going after fusion.
Wonderful.
Let's see, what can I add to that, Maggie? I think you hit on all the key aspects, but I think what's so unique about Fusion is that, every student comes to Fusion for a different reason. So the way that we show up and the way that we apply that idea of flexibility is also flexible in and of itself. So every student and every family comes with different needs and a different story. So like Maggie suggested, whether they're coming for medical needs and they need flexible scheduling, if they're an athlete, we're also open year round. So students that are going through crisis in the middle of the year, they don't have to worry about, losing the entire year academically.
Exactly.
Yeah, and falling behind. So, we can say, don't worry about it. Your mental health is a priority right now. Go do what you need to do. And then we're here when you come back. And so being open throughout the entire year and having that option for summer is a great relief for a lot of families. Additionally, with the one-to-one, our academic calendar runs traditionally, but also non-traditionally. So students have a lot more time in an academic year, a more traditional academic year, to also catch up if they were behind in credits prior to coming to Fusion. So we're really able to help a lot of students get back on track because of the flexibility and the nature of our program when, they were really coming in thinking that, they didn't have a chance to get finished with high school on time. So it's really nice to be able to have that flexibility embedded into so many aspects of our program, because you can sort of adapt and change how we develop a program for each individual student based on where they're at and what their particular needs are.
Wonderful. Thanks, Amanda. Bobby Joe?
I'm not sure how much more you can add, except for the fact that I have spent my life in a flexible role. And so I love that. I love that about Fusion. I love the fact that if a family, wants to pick up and take a vacation because they want to go to Australia in the middle of the summertime, and that happens to be January. To me, that's what stands out a lot in the flexibility beyond what Maggie and Amanda has already said. Is just allowing those families the flexibilities to be families and build the memories and build strong foundations.
Perfect. And Tom?
Yeah, just to close us out on this, I think not only are we flexible in terms of the ways that we schedule, but also in terms of our offerings. And so thinking that, yes, we have full-time enrollment, and that is something that we see again, as Amanda said, folks can come through the summer to catch up and get ahead, but we also do course for credit. We know crisis can happen. So maybe you're just trying to catch up with the class. Maybe you don't act. And I love the way we support our students' goals. And so to me, and then also our tutoring and mentoring, just another layer of flexibility in terms of we want to partner with other schools and partner in ways that we can support kids and families to the best of our ability. And so, yeah, just love
That's
the
a
way
great point. That's a great point, because one of my children transferred schools and wanted to continue a language that wasn't offered at the school that he transferred to. And we were able to do that with Fusion, which was great. And so we could continue with the third year of Chinese, which was really, really important to him and, to the continuity. So that's a great, and that wouldn't have been possible without the resources at Fusion. So I think that's a great thing. So all of that is, amazing to highlight the many ways in which Fusion can, can flex with, the individual student family needs. Can you talk about, and this is going to be different for each one of you because you're reflecting on different campuses, but can you talk a little bit about your student population at the various campus, across the ages and the grades, and then sort of separately, and as maybe a segue, what the admissions process looks like. And I don't know if Tal and Bobby Joe want to take that, more, expand on that a little bit more, but yeah, who's your student? What does your population look like at your campus? And then what the admissions process looks like.
Yeah, I could jump in and talk a little bit to the student bodies. So at the Greenwich campus, we have a good, really 6 through 12, really at both schools. We have students in middle school, we have students in high school, where years prior, at Fusion, to be completely honest, and I'm sure Amanda knows this too, middle school hasn't always been our biggest population. And, I'm not certain if it's kind of a ripple effect of COVID and there were learning gaps and parents really wanted to address them earlier rather than later and kind of reset with the one-to-one to fill in any foundational gaps that we're missing. But we are definitely seeing more middle school students than we really have ever had before, which is really nice because then it creates a lot of space for peer appropriate friendships, where before it would be a couple middle schoolers and a lot of high schoolers. Now it's really spread across 6 through 12. So that's a really nice opening there. I'd say that within the Westchester campus, what's special here, that's where I am today, is it very much feels like a city. So from the second video that you showed before, you could see the zoom out and look around the neighborhood. It's very much a city. So we tend to see very independent students. We see students that take the train, they commute by bus, they they're out there over lunch. It's actually lunch and they're pouring out right now. So they're grabbing a bite to eat together. They're very social. So it's a nice feeling there. Whereas at the Greenwich campus from the first video, there's a lot of outdoor space. We play pickleball outside. We play Foursquare outside. It's definitely more of a movement campus. So I think at both campuses, you have a really warm feel at both. The student population at Greenwich right now is a little bit heavier girl, and the population at Westchester is a little heavier boy, but that changes throughout the year because we are rolling admission.
Perfect. Thank you. Amanda?
Yeah, so at the Fairfield campus, we're kind of a merge of Westchester's city-like vibe with Greenwich's sort of like
Dorothy.
slower sort of feeling. Yeah, because we are right in Fairfield, but we're located in a little bit more of a busier industrial area right by the train station. So we do, similar to White Plains, get more students taking the train up and down the coastline to Fairfield. We actually draw also students anywhere from an hour north of us. So we'll get students all the way up from like the Guilford area and West Hartford sometimes as well. Our student body is a similar mix. We tend to be a little bit more heavy male, about 60% male, and 80%, I'd say, more like 10th, 11th, and 12th grade. We do have some middle school students, but I would say from our end, post-COVID, our middle school has been much smaller than what we used to see before that. Majority of like a profile, we see a lot of students with ADHD, anxiety, a little bit more social emotional needs. And then we also get a lot of the athletes as well, students that are pursuing something else at a higher level outside of school that really can't go to school,
way.
Yeah, in the traditional way. And then we'll also see students where, they're really overwhelmed by the pressure sort of some of the surrounding towns and the pressure to be in AP level classes and the pressure to be, applying to high level schools where academically and social emotionally, they don't really necessarily have anything diagnosed, but it's just sort of not the right feel and sort of in the public school that they're getting and how they sort of like self-identify. And so we've seen a lot of students just looking for sort of an environmental change and a more individualized approach so that they can focus more on themselves than what everybody else is doing. So it's been a really good mix at Fairfield.
Amazing. Bobby Joe and Tall, can you touch on the admissions process and how that works? Because obviously we've heard, that it's rolling, but tell us a little bit about what that means for a family in both of your campuses.
So it's pretty easy. We try to make the process as simple as possible for the parents, and for the student, because obviously a lot of them are coming out of certain situations. And so we really try to give a warm tour, really show them the facility and what it is that their life could be like. And either Maggie or myself gives them that tour, and then Maggie will sit down with them and just really get to know them and make sure that that we're a right fit together, because we want everybody to be happy. We want to create that environment. So it's pretty simple.
Tall.
Yeah, no, to jump in on that, we really want Fusion to feel inclusive and welcoming. And sometimes that can be tough if there's a very lengthy application process or you feel like you're trying to sell yourself to the school. We want you to feel welcome, and we are lucky to have you choose Fusion as well. And so that's why it really does start with bringing families in so they can see the campus, so they can see, can I actually see myself here? We talk about one to one. Sometimes it's actually seeing it in person that makes it click. And
Yeah.
then, as
It
Bobby
feels
Joe
really
mentioned,
warm and nurturing.
exactly. Our campuses are unique and stand out in different ways. And then, as Bobby Joe mentioned, we want to make sure they're meeting with Maggie, because what Maggie's able to do in this admissions meeting is really determine, is Fusion the right place for each kid?
Right.
And what we also always want to ensure is, for whatever reason, if Fusion isn't the fit, how are we supporting you in your next steps? How are you making sure that this is the best conversation of your day and that you're leaving with the information you need? And
Mhm.
finally, if we are seeing that this student could be a great fit, we want to do a trial class. It is important for us first to actually see the student in a class environment, being able to meet a
Sure.
teacher that they're hopefully going to have as well.
Right.
And so just also being able to see, okay, how did it go? How did that feel for the
How they
student?
connect. Yeah.
Yeah, how did it feel for the teacher? And that's kind of the last part of our admissions process before we take the next step of enrollment, and having them work with our director of student services so we can create the best schedule for them if we
Right.
are deciding to move forward. So that's kind of like the inner workings of the admissions process.
That's great. And I want to follow on that, sort of constructing the curriculum and whatever in a minute. But first, since we've talked about rolling, since we've talked about the admissions process, how do you transition a student into your community? Because obviously this is happening. I mean, clearly you have students that begin, at the traditional time. But how do you wrap someone into the community when this is happening at all different times of the year? How do you make them feel welcome?
I can jump in there. So one thing that we aim to do is, Tom mentioned before, those trial classes, have them meet with a teacher that they're going to have, so that they have that, friendly face outside of me, outside of mom or dad saying, hey, this is where you're going to go to school. A point person at the campus that they can ask real honest questions of, what are the kids like? What is the class like? So that they can really get used to and envision themselves in a place like Fusion. And then furthermore, when they do register and, come to Fusion, we also do an orientation the day before they start their classes, so that they can meet our director of student life in our homework cafes. They understand how the day works. They can, walk around and see where their classes are. One big profile that we haven't mentioned yet, but it's probably our most substantial profile, are students with anxiety. So that fear, that buildup, if you're starting on Monday and
Sure.
they've only had a tour, they're not really ready
Ready.
emotionally, or they get the Sunday scaries of what's going to happen the next day. Everybody, gets a little nervous around change. So we may start that Monday with an orientation. So it's very laid back and they get an opportunity to, meet other friendly faces.
Mhm.
From an academic standpoint, we do some informal assessments. We do math assessments and mind print. So we can get some content. We understand what they know in math and reading comprehension, or where they may fall compared to their peers, and then how they take information and best, so that we can give that knowledge to teachers. But it's also the notes that Amanda and I take in the meetings in real time in the admissions process. I may ask them a question like, tell me about a teacher that you really connected. What were they like? And that helps us kind of go through our teachers and make the best fits for them, so that their first week and their transition to Fusion is really supportive of them.
Amazing. Amazing.
Yeah, at Fairfield, we follow a very similar process, and it works really well. It's like finding that balance of not slowing down the process too much so that the anxiety can continue to build, but also not making it so fast that they're like, whoa, pump the brakes. So it's like integrating the student enough time so that they're feeling really connected to
Mhm.
multiple people on campus. We really buy-in is so important for us too. So we really want to involve the student as much as possible in the process of enrollment. So we welcome them during the admissions meeting to come and tell their story and share their experiences with us directly, versus always hearing from mom and dad.
Mhm.
Certainly, sometimes it's more appropriate for the parents to come alone, and then the student will always come at another time after that. We always want to have that opportunity to meet with the student, make sure that they feel really connected to the space, and that like Paul had mentioned, that they can really see themselves going to school there and thriving there. And then we also love to involve them in the course selection process. So making sure that their voice is heard and understood, and like, what are your passions? And they see yet another person that's interested in who they are as a
Right, right.
particular individual. Like, what makes you tick? What are you most excited about? Let's see how we can make that happen for you. Tell me what time of day you feel the best, like, and really working all of that into how are we going to individualize this program for you. And then similar to like what Maggie said, we also follow that where we have them come back for an orientation the day before they start. And that's where they get to start to settle into the student space a little bit more, get familiar with other students, get introduced by the director of student life, so that, the next day for their first classes, they've already had those few touch points and they already feel like that trust and connection is developing, which makes such a big difference, especially when working with high anxiety students that are nervous to get started. But we always tell them too, like with our rolling admissions, and I tell families this when they are going through the admissions process, you might be the new student this week, and there might be 3 other new students also starting this week. And then next week, there might be another new student. So the students are really used to that. And
Everybody's new. Yeah.
everyone's new all the
Yeah.
time. Yeah. And even though we've had some students that'll be with us from middle school through the end of high school, they love welcoming new students. So, you're always like, oh, who are you? Like, oh, you just got started. Like,
Right.
let's have a conversation at the homework
Because it's
cafe.
part and
And then
parcel of the community. Yeah.
exactly. So, this is the nature of sort of our program, and the culture that we work really hard to establish is very welcoming for new students because it happens all the time. So it's just something we're all used to.
Amazing. Bobby Joe?
Maggie and Amanda have pretty much touched on everything, but it's really nice to see the students welcome them. I think they, like Amanda was saying, they really do welcome them, and we watch it in here. I have the privilege. They're middle schoolers. They're pretty much right outside of my door, and so I watch those relationships build. Sometimes loudly, sometimes but it's totally fine because to hear the laughter coming out of them, and they all just really engage, and it's just really nice to see. It's really really heartwarming to see
Amazing.
the connections being made.
Tall?
Yeah, no, just on top of that, transitions can be scary. And we know that, ideally we want kids starting that day after Labor Day, but that's just not everyone's schedule. And so, what is so cool and what's been hit on is how welcoming of an environment Fusion is, not just by the students, but by the teachers, by everyone in the building. And so, I can't give a tour of a prospective family without other students saying hi and saying welcome to Fusion while doing it. And I think that just speaks to the culture. And I also just want to highlight when we operate, and all fusions do, kind of focus on this love, motivate, teach model. And so before we can even get to instruction, it's about creating a sense and a genuine creation of love. And we love our students. We want them to thrive. We want them to be set up for success, whatever that definition of success looks like for them. How can we best motivate and create a curriculum that brings in things that they're passionate about into everyday instruction? And then we can get into teaching. And so I think just that scaffolding, you're coming, and yeah, we're not just diving into math right away.
Yeah.
Like, let's
Yeah.
get to know who you are and build a relationship. And then you can use homework students, and having lunch every day. Every student has the same lunch from 12:30 to 1:30, and that's when our student clubs are meeting and getting together, and really just creating opportunities to build culture within other students. And our clubs are very student driven and led. And so yeah,
Let's
we love
focus
having
on clubs because we're going
yeah.
to discuss that in a minute. But you all touched on, the idea of individualizing a curriculum. Now, obviously you're not a special education school, but it's on my hat. So that's what we're here to talk about. So can you talk about how you individualize curriculum for students as they're coming into your program, and also, how that relates to a child that has individualized learning needs in that way?
Yeah, absolutely. So right from the beginning of the admissions process, families will share with Amanda and I neuropsych reports, ed evaluations, 504s, IEPs, any documentation. In addition to our meeting, students are so much more than the packets that they come with, but
100%.
sitting down and talking with them and hearing a little bit from them on how they like to learn best, we take it all into consideration. And one thing that we do is we'll build an accommodations plan. So in tandem with our math and mind print assessments, with all of that paperwork, our campuses do have special education leads. So in tandem with us, we'll build that accommodations plan, taking all of those recommendations into consideration and building it for the teachers so that they have a good idea of the student that they're working with, exactly what's going to work for them, what modifications may need within the classroom and to the content. So when we talk about customizing the curriculum for the students, we do have, our curriculum is made up of standards and, it's approved by the state and all of that. So we do have objectives and standards that we have to meet, but it's the way in which that we can really deliver the material, either at an honors level, a college prep, or an essential level. So the way in which we teach is really what makes us special and makes it, helpful for students that do have different learning differences, diagnoses, and needs. So if we have a student that's coming in that has auditory processing disorder, we really want to make sure that we're heavier on the visuals, that we're talking with every teacher, that they understand the supports that they may need. So maybe sometimes it's guided notes, giving it to them ahead of time, or access to certain things that we really want to make sure that they have in place from that very first day of class.
Amazing. And just to interject, I got a question from the audience asking if you have any high functioning autistic students, Asperger's level 1 type. And I can just answer that question myself, is that my son was at Fusion and very much fits that profile and had a wonderful experience there during like a very pivotal period of his academic experience, and made one of his best friends that he is still connected with today. He's in college now, but at Fusion and in your community during COVID, no less. So anyway, that was my answer to that question. So Amanda, if you'd like to chime in with your thoughts.
Yeah, absolutely. So very similar to what Maggie said, we have a special education lead on our staff who's very helpful with this process and is also a teacher. So she's also in the mix, like working with the students every day. So she really understands well, the structure and the requirements of teaching at Fusion. Just to add to this though, like our hiring process is very unique and very specific, because hiring the right types of teachers, not being a special education school, but being a school that requires types of teachers that are extremely flexible, very adaptable, very creative in the way that they teach, that they're not just looking to teach, one lesson the same way to all students. So we do look for teachers that have a depth of knowledge in their content area, but that they are really excited about trying new ways to teach students in different ways that work best for their learning profile. So they will work, as Maggie said, very closely with our special education lead, who will give them a lot of feedback in the beginning on how they might best accommodate and modify for the student. But so much comes from the relationship that the teachers develop with the student and things they discover along the way that, as Maggie suggested, you're not going to find on paper, right? So a lot of it just tends to happen organically, but it's because we're so specific also with the types of teachers that we hire that are just really able and willing to be able to do that for the students. So the relationship drives so much of the teacher's ability to understand the student and who's in front of them and how they're going to adapt the curriculum to meet
and
their
how to
needs.
make
So
it interesting,
exactly.
what to bring in subject wise. Like if you've got a student that is is a reluctant reader because they they have dyslexia and it wasn't diagnosed for a long time or whatever, and then bringing in a mythology like Harry Potter or something that really engages them is something that is possible at this level, which isn't possible in a larger setting, for sure.
100%. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So it's great for the teachers because it keeps it interesting for them too. Like they're always learning new things and finding new ways to adapt. And they really take a lot of, they're very passionate about, discovering students' passions and integrating those into the curriculum and into their assignments as much as they can. Yeah.
Amazing. Amazing. Bobby Joe?
Yeah, I love the fact that our teachers, they're not necessarily special ed teachers, but they all have that knowledge and they all have that capability to work with the students on those levels and be able to sort of give little intermittent help that they're not going to be able to get out, that they wouldn't get in the traditional in a traditional setting. And so I think that's really what stands out to me in terms of, besides obviously adding on to Maggie
Mhm.
and Amanda's, but that's really what kind of stands out to me, is that it's just in there. It's
Mhm.
just built into the natural way that they're being taught.
And tall.
Yeah, I think it's really exciting just talking to teachers about like their favorite moments in the classroom and their kind of like aha moments of like, yeah, I realize this kid loves Minecraft, and so how can I teach essay writing using Minecraft as the
Right.
basic
As the vehicle.
foundation for it?
Exactly. For sure.
Exactly. And so I just think that really is just so intentional, and it's something you can really only do when it's in this one-to-one setting, and it is so joyful to see how our teachers really want to go above and beyond and strive to do that for each kid in their classroom.
Right. Absolutely. I think it's important to recognize that, like, and I didn't really realize this until I was a parent of a fusion student. And by the way, you get an email every day of like what they did. It's like they did this in science and they did this in, in algebra, and then they did this in English. And it's like really, it's so much information. It's like, oh my gosh. But it's like they learn so much faster. They learn so much faster and so much more in that like intensive, like one-on-one. I mean, just think about it. Like that makes total sense. Um, we were sort of touching on this, but do you have my next question is do you have students that have IEPs or individualized education programs who are outplaced at Fusion? And how do you work with school districts to build a plan for their time and monitor progress?
Yeah, absolutely. So because we're not a state approved special
Yep.
education school, it's not a direct outplacement.
Yep.
So typically what we see the most is families have tried state approved schools. They're not the right fit for some reason. Sometimes there's a disparity between the disability that they have. Maybe it's something a lot like we have one student with a vision impairment, but he is functioning at an honors level in all of his classes, AP capable. And the special ed department at the other outplacements just can't find that balance between the two. So we work together in, producing resources from the district to help us teach the material in a way that's going to be perfect for that student. That's one example. Sometimes it's mediations and settlements as well, but a lot of times our families are still working with their home district to continue their PPTs or their CSC meetings, so they're still getting the services that they need. Typically, if a student's coming in with very particular supports that they need, if they're not getting it from their district, we're having that conversation up front in the admissions process. If they need OT, if they need, certain services that we don't offer at Fusion, we want to make sure that we're still complementing the program with the needs that they do have, and having outside professionals. Sometimes they come to campus and work with our students right on campus and can support them.
And
Sometimes
there's the
it's also the
flexibility
district.
again.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. It's funny when we're doing this panel, there's been a couple of things that you and Amanda have said that I'm like, oh, I should have thought of that. But there's so many different ways. And I'm glad that we're all here to kind of share our different corners of Fusion.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Amanda?
Yeah, I don't think there's too much to add to sort of that process, because it is sort of a strict process in the way that a lot of the districts work. It does sometimes vary a little bit district to district, but for the most part, as Maggie said, we're not getting direct placement out of a PPT meeting. I do always encourage families to, I love when they find Fusion and they're in that process, because they can start to kind of compare and contrast what we offer versus what the district is suggesting as, placements to look at. But, we just never know where along the process we're going to kind of come into play. We love to partner with school districts. We love to partner with every school out there, and anyone out there, whether it's their mental health professionals, as Maggie said, OT, anything that they're doing. We're, again, super flexible and love to partner. So even if there's aspects of our program that we don't have, not being special ed or therapeutic in many cases as well, making sure that we're honest with the families and upfront about how we accommodate those types of things and the partnerships that we might look to have, or other suggestions on how to supplement different resources. If they need a reading specialist to come in, then how we can get that set up for them as well. Otherwise, the process is a lot of times going through mediation, maybe working with an attorney,
Yep.
depending on where they're at with the process with their district. Yeah.
Perfect. Perfect. Thank you. And I know, Tal brought this up a couple minutes ago, so I want to have y'all talk about it now, is what do students do outside of class? And what do they do for fun? And how does Fusion help build that community? Tal, clubs.
Yeah, I mean, I can jump in and get us started. It is so fun to see the students, and to give a huge credit to our director of student life, really empowering students to be the driving force of what they want to see on campus. And so we have Fusion Movement, which is on Mondays. We're getting kids during that lunch hour off campus. There's a park nearby. They're doing different sports, they're playing games and just having fun doing whatever they want outdoors. We've also have students for the first time create a chess club, and so they're doing that during lunch, I think on Tuesdays. I'm lucky enough that video game club takes place right outside of my office, and so they'll
Amazing.
bring
Oh,
a
good for you.
giant projector and play Wii Sports and all this other stuff, and have fun. We also have Dungeons and Dragons, just so many ways for students to get involved. And what's also great is every Wednesday there's a student meeting as well, and that is where students can share what they want to have happening on campus, what they want to see. We also do field trips, and I think one of the things I want to stress is for every 50 minutes that a student is in class, they have an hour of homework cafe. And so that means they have an hour to not only get all of their homework done from that class on campus, but when they're finished, they're playing board games, they're playing cards, they're hanging out.
Supported help too. I mean, supported help in the homework club. That's really important and really
Absolutely.
wonderful.
Yeah, and so a lot of ways for kids to get involved, but I don't want to steal it all. So I'll let some of my colleagues dive into this a bit more.
Bobby Joe, you want to chime in?
Oh, I think one of my favorite things that we've instituted in here that came out of the downstairs is the quiet game has become very popular over
Oh, wow. What's that?
and to see the way, I believe we were outside yesterday playing Quiet Foursquare. I did not think it was going to be
Really?
possible. Yes.
Wow,
But to
amazing.
see the kids get integrated into one another, and like Tal said, the 12:30, the lunchtime being all together and seeing the way they connect and bond is really special. And really the way that they're allowed to just kind of be them and do them. If they want to explore a new club and a new activity, let it be. I mean,
That's
I brought a
great.
bunch of embroidery kits and art kits the other day for them to dive into. So it's, just get them moving, get them talking, getting them connected is really what the clubs are about.
I've got a question from the audience. Someone would like to know if you follow the Common Core curriculum.
Well, that's all Maggie and Amanda.
I was like, Amanda, do you want to take this one?
Nice segue.
All of our curriculum is proprietary to Fusion. So we have a full education team that develops all of our curriculum, and teachers across the country through Fusion are highly involved in that as well. What's really important to us at Fusion is that our curriculum allows students to transfer in and transfer out of Fusion very seamlessly, and that also it's prepares them for college. So with that, it differs slightly sometimes state to state. But as an example, our science curriculums, our science curriculum is developed from NGSS standards. Our other curriculums are developed with national and state standards in mind, but it is all proprietary to Fusion. But we are always willing to share it with other school districts and families so that they can see that when you take chemistry, you are taking chemistry. How that actually looks and what the student experience is like is where it differs.
Right.
But the base and the foundation for all of our curriculum is very sort of standard to what you would see anywhere, but it is developed internally by Fusion.
Wonderful.
Yeah,
Wonderful.
and you may see some math and science textbooks that have Common Core integrated into it, but it doesn't mean that we're following it, to a T.
Right.
But there's definitely influences, in New York State, we have the Regents exams here where they're exposed to the same topics. And like you mentioned before, we're going through it at a deeper level. So we see students that perform pretty well on those exams because it's not just surface level, we're really going in deep with them. So we try not to put ourselves to any standard like that, but we are exposing them to the same topics that they would see.
Right. And obviously it bears mentioning that, honors level classes, AP classes are all available in this construct, according to what the students, levels and interests are. So I just wanted to point that out. With respect to time, we're kind of coming up on, we're getting close to an hour. God, it goes fast. So we have to touch on, Amanda, you mentioned college. So, how do you start preparing a student to leave Fusion for college for the next step? What does that process look like? And can you walk me through that?
Yeah, absolutely. One of my favorite things in sort of situations that we see a lot at Fusion is students coming in without even like the hope or the dream that college is even an option.
Yeah.
Not all the time. Some students, it is still on their path, but I love the stories where we have so many of them on my campus right now where college wasn't even on the radar because they didn't think that they could be academically successful, that they were going to be able to even be given the chance
And they weren't
to
interested.
and they weren't interested. Yeah, because they were like, school, I got to get out of school as
Right.
soon as possible and never go
Right.
back,
Right.
And so then they start to see, they take their time at Fusion to understand who they are, how they learn, what they need, how to advocate for themselves. I think what's really also important is that with all of our classes being taught one-to-one, they become so much more comfortable speaking and communicating with adults.
Yes.
And we love when we have students come back, our alumni, whether we do a panel or they come back and visit, they always talk about how helpful that was. And they didn't realize it during the time at Fusion because
Yeah.
it's just the way that we are,
Yeah.
but how
Until they
much
got
more,
outside. Yeah.
ready they were to be able to go talk to their professors and find value in those relationships. So that's a huge piece to it as well. And then additionally, everything we do academically, the executive functioning support, all of those types of things are embedded within our program. And then we have particular classes students can take as well. But we do have a full post-secondary counseling team. So every family every year is highly encouraged to do a post-secondary consult with our post-secondary team, whether they're in ninth grade or whether they're coming in the middle of senior year and they're like, oh my gosh, like we haven't done anything. What do we do? And we have a full team that's ready to support no matter what the student's path is after college. If they're looking to go to a four-year university, if they're looking to do a gap year, if they want to go into the workforce, if they want to go to a trade school, if they don't know it all, we have an amazing team ready to be able to help them start sort of looking through that process. Students also have a course that they can take in typically the second half of their junior year, post-secondary exploration, where it's a little bit of life skills and then also starting to, look into the future and what those options might be. And that typically ends with the post-secondary counselor. It's taught by post-secondary counselors. You're getting that direct connection with them right away. And then they'll make a recommendation based on what you've sort of like discovered, throughout that class in terms of, what should our next steps be in the post-secondary planning process. Most of our students are college bound, but we always have a good mix of students going to college, like I mentioned, going to gap years, going right into the workforce. So our priority is just making sure that there's a plan in place and that plan suits that individual student, and making sure again that it's really individualized, that we're setting the student up for success. But we have a lot of resources available, both internally and then on that regional team as well of those post-secondary counselors.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Well, you know what? With respect to everybody's time, I know everyone's taking their lunch to have this, to have this dialogue. But I just love to thank you all for joining us. I feel like we've barely scratched the surface of what Fusion is and what it can do for your student. So thank you all for joining us. If you're a participant in this panel and you have interest in learning more about Fusion, please reach out to me, Christine at spedlegalfund.org, and I can connect you with any of the people that are on this panel for any of the 3 campuses for more information. But thank you again, everyone, for joining us, and be well. Have a great afternoon.